even with our differences, there is a place we're all connected. Each of us can find each other's light. So for tonight, we ask for what we know can be, and on this day we hope for what we still can't see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though this world needs so much more, there's so much to be thankful for.
Our lives flow on in endless song. And now that Thanksgiving has come and gone, we are officially in the holiday season. And for me, I can pinpoint to you the exact threshold of this season. The harbinger of the holiday season is Santa Claus riding in during the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City. From the time that I was a toddler up until I was a young adult and home for the holiday from college, I was alerted from wherever I was in my parents' house that Santa had made his annual appearance by my mother's excited shouting. She loves that moment of the parade. In fact, my sister sent me a video this year of her watching it, just so I'm in the loop. And her declaration that at that precise point in time, the holiday season has officially begun, has stuck with me as the truth. I have even used it in arguments about whether it is too soon to begin playing All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. No, it is not November. No, it is not the hour before the parade. It becomes appropriate that exact moment Santa rides in and no sooner. I feel slightly silly admitting this to you all, and I'm sure that you have your own ideas or perhaps equally strong opinions, your own thresholds and traditions. And my point is that these little moments we find meaning in matter. One time, as a somewhat surly teenager, I slept through the entire parade. I was told, mostly playfully, by my mother that I had missed the start of the holiday season. At that point in my life, I was mostly apathetic about watching Santa Claus ride in, but I remember feeling surprised and taken aback by that surprise to find that I really did feel the loss of missing that moment, that transition, that entry point to an entire season of the year, a season about gratitude, about miracles, about the stories we tell. The season we are ushering in can be a challenging time in different ways for many of us. A passage by author Jeanette Winterson from her novel Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, for me, hits the nail on the head. She writes, "I have a theory that every time you make an important choice, the part of you left behind continues the life you could have had. Some people's emanations are very strong. Some people create themselves afresh outside of their own body. This is not fancy," she says. "There is a chance that all the parts of me, running along all the choices I did and did not make for a moment, brush against one another." Now, Jeanette Winterson is a poet, so to make this a little more concrete and simple, what I think she is saying is that when we make choices, there's always those lingering what-ifs and they have their own kind of ghostly existence. And I would extend her words beyond choices. All these emanations, or these versions, the what ifs, the realities that could be true if circumstances and choices had been different, often just feel more real this time of year. They brush up against us because they are on our mind, and it can sometimes feel like a fountain of grief. We ask ourselves questions such as, what if my dear family member was still alive? Or maybe you ask, what if I could reconcile with my sibling? Or perhaps, what if I hadn't lost the pregnancy? What if I didn't fear for my neighbors' and friends' quality of life, health, and safety in this country? What if we could be in right relationship with this earth? Grief can feel like a corporeal reality, afresh outside of us this time of year. It sets us face to face with our own hearts. This coming face to face with our own hearts is a part of the history of the season called Advent that we are approaching. For Western Christians, Advent is a time of preparation and a time of waiting. Traditionally, especially in the very early Christian church, Advent is a lot more like Lent, the 40 days before Easter. It is a time for serious and often solemn reflection of longing for God or for the holy to be incarnated in this world. For us Unitarian Universalists, no matter what you believe, this season can show us how love and grief are often inextricable, how we wouldn't know ourselves if we didn't also see those parts of ourselves left behind, continuing the lives we could but do not have. We notice and can be curious about the relationship between our heartbrokenness and our gratitude, and ultimately turn our attention to the stories we have and tell about miracles in our lives. One of the miracle stories that many people tell around this time of year is the story of Mary, mother of Jesus. According to the stories, Mary was afraid and surprised when she learned she was to become a mother. She was, after all, a young, poor Jewish woman of color living under the Roman Empire, soon to find herself an unwed teenage mother. I can only imagine that as she waited, as she prepared for the birth of her child, she was frightened. I can only imagine the process of reckoning, of coming to terms with what is not, what could have been, of her trust in her God, the hopes of what will be. But she didn't turn away from the journey, and perhaps we can call that a miracle. How, despite the hardest of circumstances, she decided what was best for her, faced the unknown as a parent, then and for her whole life, discovering how gratitude and grief are always bound up in each other, of being willing to discover the miracle of parenthood in the swirling depths of loss and creation. Now, the subject of miracles, I know, can be a complicated one for many of us. As Unitarian Universalists, we value reason. We look to rationality and science as sources for our vast spiritual tradition. So miracles may feel controversial because if they are events or stories that are unexplainable in some kind of way, that suggests some kind of intervention or source besides nature, then what is that source? Many of us do not necessarily believe in a deity or deities, or even that the universe or the holy can act in our lives in that kind of way. But many of us still have those stories that just balance on the edge, stories where explanation and reason just begin to feel a little useless because they are not the way through to the heart of the story. Miracles have everything to do with those emanations, those versions of reality resulting from circumstances that did or did not come to be, and choices made and unmade, because miracles jolt us into realizing that it was very likely our lives could have looked extraordinarily different, and yet some combination of chance, choice, and circumstance carried us in a different direction. They are the plot twists, the moments in our lives where walls fall or fade away, and there seems to be a direct line to source, to the heart of this world, to love, perhaps against the odds. The stories of these miracles or these miraculous moments, big and small, are a source of gratitude for us. So, I did not believe in miracles until I was 19, until I experienced one so clear and so confounding that I often still don't really know what to make of it. It is a story of a quilt and its 30 or so year journey, its embodiment of the interconnectedness of life, and the miracle of that sacred interconnectedness for which we, as Unitarian Universalists, are in such deep gratitude and awe. I first saw this quilt when I was 18, when my roommate freshman year of college brought it home from Goodwill at the beginning of the year. And it was made out of velvet, purple and red and yellow and green ornate squares. It was huge and overwhelmed the twin-size beds in our dormitory. The quilt was gorgeous and intricate and full of vibrancy and love, completely unique and unlike anything I had seen before. I fell in love with it the day my roommate brought it home. Spent most of the year wishing it was just mine. And when my roommate couldn't fly it home to Arizona from Connecticut, she gave it to me, knowing how much I loved it and wanted me to keep it. I offered just to store it for her until the next semester. So I ended up taking it home to New York, where I placed it on my bed in my parents' house. Fast forward, 6 months later, sophomore year of college, I was home for Thanksgiving. My family had our extended family over, and I had gone into my room for a few minutes after dinner when my grandmother knocked on my door. I told her to come in. She walked in, looked at me, looked down at my bed, saw the quilt, and screamed like she had seen a ghost. My mother rushed into the room, very alarmed, while my grandma, now with her hands over her heart, tried to slow her breath enough so that she could speak. When she finally could, what she eventually did tell us was this: she had made that quilt over 30 years ago as a present for her late husband. It was their bedspread, and after he died, while in the midst of her grief, she sold the quilt to an antique dealer. A week later, filled with regret, she visited the antique dealer to try to get it back, but he had already sold it to someone else. And now, 30 years later, she had come upon the quilt gently folded on the foot of her granddaughter's bed. The last important part of this story is that my grandma is not my biological relative, nor is she either of my parents' mother. She's a family friend who has no grandchildren, and I know living biological grandparents. When I was a child, we chose each other as family over a game of catch. When I, with my mother's encouragement, asked my grandmother to be my grandmother, and our families became intertwined. We started sharing in holidays, birthdays, choral concerts, and other life events. My grandmother's Jewish, while my immediate family is not, so we started observing some Jewish holidays and even creatively came up with our own traditions, like making a Passover house, similar to a gingerbread house, made out of matzah and entirely kosher materials, while my grandmother told us the Passover story. So perhaps like the quilt itself, we brought the stuff of our lives together and formed something bigger. We pieced together a story about family and about the mystery of our interconnectedness. And this story deepened the sense of time in our relationship. The quilt felt like a kind of otherworldly confirmation of our relationship that we did not need to be grandmother and granddaughter, but suddenly our histories felt newly intertwined. Her grief and healing and my life met and shaped each other. The quilt evoked all of those possible versions of ourselves and each other, of what could have been but wasn't, and brought us right back to the miracle of our love. I offered my tearful grandmother the quilt to be hers again, finally, but she told me she was just grateful to know where it was, that she wanted us to keep it, that it was enough to know it had returned to the family. And I did not know what to make of what had just happened. It felt like too large of a coincidence to call it that. The experience, the journey of this quilt pushed and exceeded the very limits of the word coincidence. And it wasn't even that what had happened was so remarkable, although it was, that makes this a memory of a miracle for me. The miracle is that every time I tell this story, I feel the strange remnants of that jolt I experienced almost 10 years ago when my grandmother walked into my room. I think about every single occurrence that connects my grandmother to myself, and I am reminded of how beautiful and messy and surprising and holy this life is. And all I can feel is indescribable gratitude fill my body. I feel connected to her story. I feel connected to a larger story of heartbrokenness and loss, grief over her husband, over the loss of the quilt, and of gratitude and love for chosen family. Walls fall away, and suddenly I know so deeply in my soul that there is no possible way we are not alone, that whatever you believe, we are all inexplicably connected to one another and to this larger story of beauty and loss and gratitude. Miracles don't have to be stories like mine that are almost unbelievable. Walt Whitman said in our reading today, "To me, every hour of the light and the dark is a miracle. Every square yard of the surface of the earth is spread with the same." Miracles collapse the ordinary and the extraordinary into each other. They take those distinctions down with the very same crumbling walls that were obscuring our connections to each other and to spirit or source. A miracle could be the story of a time you said yes, or the story of a time you said a life-giving no. It could be the moment you first looked into your child's eyes, or gazed at the full moon over the Atlantic, or finally found a long-lost family recipe, or felt your hardened heart melt when you heard yourself say the words, "I'm sorry," or had a teacher who changed the story you told yourself about who you are. I know you have your own stories, no matter if you call them miracles or not. Your own memories of moments that when you call them to mind, when you speak or write them into existence, there is a clearness, a sudden alignment where you are face to face with your own heart and with the heart of this world. So, what are the stories you hold? What would it mean to keep them afresh, closer to the surface of your heart, to call upon them as a source of ordinary gratitude? When this season of the year feels challenging, when the grief is real, pain like an arrow, and we are grappling with heartbreak, gratitude can not only be an intentional practice, but also a way of understanding the connections between that heartbreak and that gratitude. Like a husband who has died, a quilt that has returned, like a relationship that has ended, and falling in love again under a full moon over the ocean. A grandfather who is deeply missed, and finding his recipe and tasting his love in the miracle of each bite. This time of year, recall, tell your own stories, the ones where the words, the logic just seems to fall off the page. Travel down from your head to your heart as you hold these stories close. Savor the gratitude, the places in your body that gratitude soothes and quiets, the places where it vibrates and articulates itself. Remember, especially when the truth feels the farthest away, that you are a miracle. Amen. May it be so.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul.
Hey, we're so happy you're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
each week you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed
and be a blessing.